Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of Police Commissioner Tisch and the New York City Police Foundation, I would like to welcome everyone to the 2025 State of the NYPD briefing. To begin, I ask that everyone please rise for the presentation of our nation's colors and the singing of the national anthem by Detective Makia Brown.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we held at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet to wave for the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Thank you, Detective Brown. Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. It is now my pleasure to introduce our first speaker for the morning, the President and CEO of Montefiore Einstein and the Chairman of the New York City Police Foundation Board of Trustees, Dr. Philip Oswald.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Governor Kathy Hochul, the Honorable Mayor Eric Adams, invited guests, members of law enforcement. Thank you all for being here. The former British Prime Minister, Sir Robert Peel, once said, "The police are the public are the police." The premise of a collective responsibility for public safety holds true, even now, especially now. The invaluable work of the New York City Police Foundation adds another dimension unforeseen by Robert Peel. We've expanded beyond our individual responsibilities and formed a collective of stakeholders, business, community, influential leaders, all pledging their valuable time and resources toward a shared vision of safety in New York. Crime Stoppers, which offers cash rewards for information, has helped solve thousands of violent crimes. The International Liaison Program provides real-time, actionable intelligence and a head start in response to emerging information from around the world. Improvements in training and technology, the Options Program, a community wellness center in the heart of the Bronx, new lightweight bulletproof vests for detectives. These are just a few of the programs we sponsor. Last year, we launched a multi-million-dollar capital campaign to assist the NYPD with building a state-of-the-art tactical training center. The goal is simple: improving outcomes during critical incidents. We've also expanded our efforts to foster stronger connections between the NYPD and those they serve. The police are the public are the police. Our private-public partnership adds to the welfare of the people of this city. And none of this would be possible without the members of the board of the New York City Police Foundation. I wish to acknowledge and thank all the members of the board who are here this morning. Thank you. The innovation, coordination, and execution of Police Foundation initiatives would not be possible without the tireless work of the dedicated staff of the Police Foundation. I wish to thank them all, led by President and CEO Susan Birnbaum. Thank you. We're proud to host this event as we do every year, and to hear directly from the police commissioner. Since her appointment by Mayor Adams, she has quickly shown that she is the right leader at the right time to helm the largest police force in the nation. Having risen through the NYPD early in her career before going to head the city's Information Technology Agency and then the Sanitation Department, Commissioner Tisch is not only uniquely qualified for the job, she has a track record of results, both in the department and outside. She has a track record of demonstrating leadership. In her own words, she aims to make the police department stronger, its service better, and our city safer. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Police Commissioner of New York City, the Honorable Jessica Tisch.
Good morning. Thank you, Dr. Azwa, for that introduction and for everything that you do with the New York City Police Foundation. Along with President and CEO Susan Birnbaum, Executive Director Greg Roberts, and the Foundation's board, trustees, staff, and supporters, you are the NYPD's most essential partner, and our work together has never been more important. From Crime Stoppers to the Options Program, precinct enhancements, equipment upgrades, and so much more, the Police Foundation has been there for our department and for the people of our city for more than 50 years. We simply could not do this work without your support. One powerful example of this is our International and Domestic Liaisons program. The NYPD has the greatest intelligence and counterterror operations and personnel in the world, which have thwarted several attacks and saved countless lives. But as vigilant as we are, terror plots against our city have more than doubled in the past decade. We will always stand united to keep New Yorkers safe from these threats, and the Foundation's help here is critical. On behalf of the entire New York City Police Department, thank you. We are privileged today to be joined by the Mayor of New York City, the Honorable Eric Adams. I often tell people how we can complete each other's sentences on policing and sanitation policy. By the way, sir, rat complaints so far this year are down 23%. I have truly found a kindred spirit in this work, and I thank you, sir, for the trust that you have placed in me. But more importantly, thank you for the trust you have placed in the brave women and men of the NYPD. When people called to defund the police, you defended them. And when you needed to make the tough but necessary policy changes to make our city safer, you did so, and have faith that New York's finest would deliver. And of course, Governor Kathy Hochul is here this morning. Governor, you have been a tremendous partner and ally, and it is an absolute honor to have you here with us. This room is full of people who care deeply about the safety and the security of New York City. And your investments in that safety are personal, because our city's future is your future too. I get it. New York City is my home, it's where I grew up, and like many of you, it's where I'm raising my own family. My appointment as police commissioner is not only the honor of my life, it is the greatest responsibility of my lifetime, because I know exactly what's at stake. And I want for my 2 young boys what we all want: a safe city free from fear of crime, violence, and disorder. That's the noble mission of this department, and nobody does this work better than your NYPD officers and civilians. They are consistently setting the standard and leading the way. Case in point, when United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson was tragically murdered on the streets of Midtown last month, the eyes of the world were again on the New York City Police Department. For 5 days, NYPD investigators, led by the Midtown North Precinct Detective Squad, combed through thousands of hours of video, followed up on hundreds of tips, and processed every bit of forensic evidence, including DNA, fingerprints, IP addresses, and so much more. We deployed drones, canine units, scuba divers. We leveraged the domain awareness system, our Argus cameras, and conducted aviation canvasses. And our detectives went door to door, interviewing potential witnesses and doing that good old-fashioned police work that our investigators are famous for. On the Monday morning that Luigi Mangione was apprehended, I was in my executive conference room getting my daily brief from our police chiefs. Joe Kenny, our great chief of detectives, was updating me that the forensic evidence had come back from the police lab, and unfortunately, neither the fingerprints nor the DNA evidence on the water bottle or the Kind bar had produced any matches in either our local or our national law enforcement databases. This was discouraging news, to say the very least. I slumped down in my chair and I said, "All right, Chief, so what's next?" Chief Kenny expressed full optimism that the perp would be apprehended and started walking me through his next planned investigative steps, while also noting that separate and apart from that work, anyone at any time, anywhere in the country, could recognize the person from the photo that we had put out. Despondent, I said to him, "All right, Chief, so what you're telling me is we could get this guy 6 months from now or 5 minutes from now?" He answered me straight, "That's right, boss." Exactly 5 minutes later, as we are going through the various leads that our detective bureau was tracking, Deputy Commissioner Kaz Daughtry's phone rings. It's the operations division. He speaks for about 20 seconds and looks up at us and said, "We got him." "We did?" "Yes, Commissioner. Operations just got a call from the Altoona, Pennsylvania Police Department. They have our person of interest in custody." "They do?" I looked at Chief Kenny. "Chief, is this right? Do they have him? And who the heck is he? And where the hell is Altoona, Pennsylvania?" Chief Kenny, again, totally flat and dispassionately says, "Boss, give me 5 minutes." And he goes down to his office. When he reemerges, he has an uncharacteristic smile on his face. "Boss, they got him. Person of interest has the ID that matches the one they used at the hostel, the same gun, the same silencer, the same clothing." Whippy! I did what any police commissioner would do in that moment, and I hugged every person in that room. And today, it is my great pleasure to introduce all of you to some of the members of the team who made it happen. First, Lieutenant Frank Gandiosi and Detective James Curcio, who masterfully led this case for the NYPD. These guys didn't go home to their families and barely slept for 5 And also here today, from the Altoona, Pennsylvania Police Department, we have Patrolman Joseph Detweiler and Tyler Fry, who responded to that McDonald's and took an armed Luigi Mangione into custody. Patrolman, on behalf of the dozens of detectives who worked this case, I am proud today to designate both of you as honorary detectives in the New York City Police Department. Congratulations. I would also like to acknowledge Altoona Police Chief Joseph Merrill and Deputy Chief Derek Swope, who are here with us this morning. Thank you all so much for being here. But the NYPD's work isn't just about the flashy, famous cases. It's about the everyday investigations and radio runs that keep our city safe, and our officers are out there making a real difference. Overall index crime was down in 2024, with more than 3,600 fewer major crimes reported than the year before. Murders were at a 5-year low. Both shooting incidents and shooting victims were down for the 3rd straight year, including the lowest number of shootings in Brooklyn since CompStat began recording them in the early 1990s. Major crime was down in housing, and it was down in our transit system for the 2nd straight year. That's good news, but something bigger is happening right now. I am proud to announce that over the past 2 months, index crime in New York City is down a whopping 16%. 16% in December and 17% in January. This includes year-to-date declines in every borough of the city and double-digit reductions in 4 of the 7 major crime categories, including murder, robbery, grand larceny, and auto theft. Shooting incidents are down more than 28% year-to-date, and we set a record last week by going 5 days without a single shooting victim, the first time that has happened since the 1990s. For the month, we are on pace to have the fewest shootings of any January in the CompStat era. Why? What explains this? There's one strategy that is game-changing and is showing real potential to extend the transformation of policing that began in the CompStat era of the early 1990s. Then, the department thought about crime at the precinct level. But the average precinct in New York City is quite large, extending 4 square miles, and each precinct varies widely in size and population and land use. So the traditional precinct-based model doesn't always allow for the most precise analysis. As you all know, I have a tech background and a data background. I knew coming into this job that our data has become more detailed and defined over the years, and our analytic tools have gotten more sophisticated. We certainly can dig so much deeper into the numbers and be so much more precise. So now we're focusing on much smaller geographical areas than precincts, specific street segments, portions of neighborhoods, sometimes stretches of several blocks that cross precinct borders where we see spikes in crime. We call them zones, and zone-based policing is a hyper-local, data-driven policing model. We know that the presence of police drives down crime and disorder, and the idea behind zone-based policing is quite literally to flood the zone. In a world with limited resources, you can't flood the zone across a 4 square mile precinct, and you don't need to, but you can do that across 10 problematic blocks. These zones are being identified by an algorithm that analyzes crimes and defines clusters of violence and disorder. It shows us exactly where our cops need to be and the conditions they need to address there. And I want to be clear, this is not about targeting individuals. It is about effective, efficient officer deployments. It is a focused, location-based, scalpel approach to crime. It is emphatically the 2025 modernization of the classic cops on the dot strategy that fueled so much crime-fighting success over the past 3 decades. And how appropriate it is to take this next step in the CompStat revolution on the heels of its 30th anniversary. The zone model allows us to be quite nimble too, through the use of mobile field forces, groups of officers that can be deployed to any part of the city at any time. Right now, about 650 additional officers per day who had previously been working desk jobs are assigned to high crime zones across the 5 boroughs, driving a big part of the crime reductions that we are seeing right now. For example, over the last 5 weeks of the year, major crime in our holiday zones went down by a staggering 37%, and our Roosevelt Avenue zone has seen a 31% crime decrease over the past 2 months. That's the plan for above ground, but what about below ground? The subways will always be a bellwether for public safety in New York City, and while we have seen crime reductions on our trains, we're not where we need to be. And we know that the frightening stories of violent crime in our subways resonate deeply with New Yorkers. So we went to work immediately. And today, I'm announcing a 3-part plan to address crime in our transit system. Part 1 is already well underway. 2 months ago, I re-examined our existing transit deployments and found that entirely too many cops were posted at subway entrances, mezzanines, and turnstiles. And not enough were on the trains and the platforms where 78% of transit crime actually occurs. I also looked at the crime numbers by subway station and found that our deployments of officers were not necessarily hitting all of the most problematic stations at the right times. So I directed the redeployment of more than 200 transit officers to daily dedicated subway patrols on the trains and station platforms that need them the most. These moves are already yielding results. So far in January, major crime in transit is down another 36% compared to last year and is 29% below pre-pandemic levels. But people still don't feel safe. So part 2 of the plan began in full this week, when hundreds of officers, many of whom were previously working desk jobs, were deployed into our subway system, enabling us to post 2 cops on every overnight train. Officers will move from one car to the next and address conditions as they encounter them. The idea behind this initiative, frankly, is not only to make our riders safer, but also to make them feel safer. These deployments were first announced by Governor Hochul, and we thank her deeply for her investment and partnership in a safer transit system. Now, part 3 of the plan goes straight to the sense of disorder in the subways and is centered on the enforcement of the transit system's rules. Over the past 10 years, these rules, such as the prohibitions against taking up multiple seats, laying outstretched, smoking, drinking alcohol, have not been consistently enforced, which increases the perception of an unsafe city and makes the rides unpleasant for everyone else on the train. That needs to change, and we've been piloting that change for about 2 weeks in a transit district in Queens. Beyond the feeling of disorder, this strategy is designed to address the surge of random acts of violence that we're seeing in the subways. Because the truth is, the overwhelming majority of people who commit these violent acts have a long history of unlawful conduct in the transit system. We want this message to be very clear. Our officers will not simply walk by someone who is violating the law and disrupting passengers. We are going to correct the condition. We will also match our enforcement with services when needed, because we know that we must deal with the worsening mental health crisis. Clearly, this is not just a New York issue, but that certainly doesn't excuse inaction. Our subway trains and platforms are not homeless shelters. They are not psychiatric hospitals. And as a city, we have a moral duty to provide services to people who need them. The NYPD needs strong partners in this, and we stand with the mayor and the governor in support of their legislative efforts to proactively address severe mental health in our subways and elsewhere. But in order to do this work with the level of care and attention that it requires, our officers need the necessary tools. So today I'm also proud to announce that the department is expanding our crisis intervention training to include ICAT, integrating communications, assessment, and tactics. The NYPD responds to about 180,000 jobs involving a person in mental distress every year. And the goal is to teach our officers to better understand, identify, and de-escalate these high-stakes situations. Our first priority is to protect life, and to put it bluntly, our cops need better tactics. This enhanced training will give them that, and we're starting to roll it out this year, beginning with our newest recruit class. Our work must not only make people safe, but it must make them feel safe too. When neighborhoods are plagued by issues such as aggressive panhandling, unruly street vending, public urination, abandoned vehicles, it gives the impression of an unsafe community. So today, I am announcing the planned overhaul of the NYPD's approach to quality of life enforcement. For too long, we asked our cops to correct these conditions without sufficient direction. No more. Our plan, which will be finalized and implemented over the coming months, begins with the creation of the Quality of Life Division, headed by a new chief of citywide quality of life. Department-wide units that were responsible for this enforcement will be centralized under this new command, and officers in precincts will be assigned to newly formed Q teams to specifically respond to these issues. At the same time, we're developing QStat, which will track quality of life complaints, the same way that CompStat tracks crime complaints. As Mayor Adams often says, you have to inspect what you expect, or else it's all suspect. Sounds better when he says it. These QStat meetings will bring our quality of life work into much greater focus, more accurately measure our effectiveness, and recenter our approach to public safety. Every day, the women and men of the NYPD are working to reduce crime in our neighborhoods and on our subways. Despite the incredible gains they've made, we know we could be doing so much more, and we know what's standing in our way. It's surging recidivism. In 2020, law changes and reforms to the criminal justice system were enacted in New York State. These changes had wide-ranging consequences that skewed focus away from crime victims. Prosecutors were unable to build and present cases, and judges began to reflexively release offenders with no real recourse for their actions. The result is a revolving door that puts repeat offenders back on the streets again and again and again. The system is unsustainable, it defies common sense, and it is crying out for a course correction. We all witnessed the horrific murder of 14-year-old Caleb Rios earlier this month by a chronic recidivist who struggled with significant mental health challenges. Young Caleb was murdered while on his way to school in the Bronx, and speaking to his mother after his death was one of the most painful experiences of my life. It is a tragedy for his family and for our city. But the individual who murdered young Caleb had been previously arrested multiple times for arson, for burglary, possession of a knife, possession of a loaded 9mm gun, criminal mischief, harassment. Some of these charges were as recently as November. This is not a one-off. Recidivism is getting worse in New York City. Compared to 2018, 2024 saw an unacceptable surge in the number of individuals arrested 3 times or more for the same crime in the same year. The increase was 61% for burglary, 64% for shoplifting, 71% for grand larceny, 83% for robbery, 119% for auto theft. And when we look at felony assault, an index crime that was up in 2024, that increase was a staggering 147%. Ask any cop and they will tell you, they'll make an arrest, they'll transport the prisoner down to central booking and go back to their command to finish their paperwork. But before that cop is even done with their regular tour, that perp is back at the precinct to pick up their property and head back out onto the street. It's demoralizing, it's nuts, and it is evidence of a broken system. As the mayor and I have said, the cops are out there doing their jobs. Last year, the NYPD made the most major felony arrests since 1998. But at the same time, we're hitting recidivism milestones that undermine that work and that threaten the communities that our cops work so hard to protect. Compared to 2018, misdemeanors in New York City were up in 2024. At the same time, and for the very same crimes, the rates of decline to prosecute were up 31%, while the rates of bail set were down 54%. Imagine how frustrating and disheartening it is for our cops to arrest the same people for the same crimes in the same neighborhoods over and over. And how scary it is for New Yorkers to see the same person who victimized them one day right back in their neighborhood the next. So we will chart a new course, one that reestablishes and reinforces the natural alliance between the police and the public they serve, and one that properly balances the rights of criminal defendants with the safety needs of the general public. I am proud to share that I have been working alongside Deputy Mayor for Public Safety Chauncey Parker and all 5 of our district attorneys to put forward a proposed change to the discovery law that will remove onerous restrictions and irrelevant technicalities that cause far too many cases to be needlessly dismissed and allow dangerous offenders to avoid accountability under the law. I am hopeful that this common sense approach, with the support of the mayor, the deputy mayor, all 5 DAs, and the police commissioner of the city of New York, will see the light of day in Albany. I have also been very clear with some of our district attorneys that their declined prosecution rates, in particular for misdemeanor offenses, are unacceptable and are contributing to the feeling of disorder in this city. One thing that we can do to make our city safer is hire more cops. This is going to be a major focus of our administration, and I am not going to sugarcoat the real recruitment issues that we're facing. In the not-so-distant past, NYPD applicants used to wait for years to get the call to join the academy. Now, we are practically begging people to take the exam. So what happened? First and foremost, we're still seeing the real impact of the defund and anti-police movements. A lot of the rhetoric aimed at our police is vile, and the pendulum has swung too far away from what I consider to be the most important and noble job anyone could take on. And we need to swing it back. Because it's quite simple. More cops on patrol make our city safer. So along with the mayor, we are working aggressively to get the NYPD's headcount back up to 35,000 officers, starting with a new class of 1,000 recruits I swore in just yesterday. The last time the NYPD hired such a big class was nearly a decade ago. To keep our city safe, we must have the best trained, the best prepared, and the best equipped officers in law enforcement. And we will be doing more work to increase our headcount in the coming months. Policing in New York City may be more complex and technologically advanced than ever before, but at its core, the job remains straightforward. Prevent crime and disorder, uphold the law, keep people safe. To do this, a law enforcement agency needs one thing above all else: the public trust. And it all begins with strong ethical leadership. So immediately upon taking this job, and at the mayor's direction, I began a full review of every bureau, division, and unit in the NYPD. We would enhance what was working well and fix what wasn't. I want to be extremely clear about this. In my career, I have set high standards for myself and for those who work with and for me. And I have been very clear with all members of my executive team that I expect them to rise to meet these very high standards. Over the past 10 weeks, we've made nearly a dozen changes to our top leadership, matching the right skills and the right experience with the right roles. We did an overhaul of the Internal Affairs Bureau, both in leadership and personnel. We returned about 1,000 cops from administrative roles back to patrol. We initiated system-wide changes to our overtime policies, also at the mayor's direction, designed to prevent misuse and to ensure compliance with NYPD and city regulations. And we amended the NYPD's vehicle pursuit policy to give our officers clearer guidance and smarter protocols. The advanced tools of modern-day policing make it possible to apprehend criminals more safely and effectively than ever before, and early results have shown a 66% decrease in the number of vehicle pursuits over the past 2 weeks, making our city streets safe for the public and the police. Perhaps you've caught on that I am a no-nonsense, data-driven, results-oriented person who has always been willing to do the hard work of finding precise, tailored answers to difficult questions. My standards are high for this department, and my expectations are even higher. This is the energy that the mayor brought to City Hall with the directive to get stuff done. It's the mindset I bring to leading the greatest police department in the world, and it is the heroic pursuit of every single member of the NYPD. I believe deeply in the nobility of policing because I have seen the work your officers do up close and personal. It is my honor and the greatest privilege of my life to now be able to guide them, to take care of them, to support them, and yes, to fight like hell for them, because they are the reason why the state of policing in New York City is strong. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Tisch. And it's now my pleasure to introduce the President and CEO of the New York City Police Foundation, Susan Birnbaum.
Okay, wow. Just so everyone knows, that's 9 weeks. 9 weeks, and we have all this. So we are inspired, and we have so much to look forward to. So thank you, Commissioner. It's an honor to be here today to hear your vision for the NYPD in New York City. And we're also honored to have Governor Kathy Hochul and Mayor Eric Adams here today. Thank you. We have every confidence in you, Commissioner, and the members of the police department who are working tirelessly to keep us all safe. The Police Foundation could not support the efforts of the NYPD without the generosity of our incredible trustees, our supporters, and our esteemed chairman, Dr. Philip Azua, and I want to take a moment to thank our chairman and Montefiore Einstein for generously sponsoring today's State of the NYPD. Thank you. Now it's our pleasure to begin a Q&A with Commissioner Tisch. I believe we have a few microphones ready to go. And so please raise your hand if you'd like to ask a question, and I think our ceremonial team will bring one to you. I believe we only have time for 2 to 3 questions, so why don't we begin? Elizabeth?
Thank you, and good morning. Thank you, Commissioner. In the past week, we have seen immigration and customs enforcement agents around our city detaining migrants. Could you please share with us NYPD's policy with regard to migrant enforcement?
Sure, it's pretty straightforward. The NYPD will not participate in civil immigration enforcement. The laws of New York City are very clear, and the NYPD will always follow the law. We will, however, go after criminals wherever they are, regardless of their immigration status. And we have always done a lot of work, both with our federal and local partners in that regard. Just yesterday, we announced with our Queens District Attorney the indictment of 10 TDA members, and that our detectives had essentially shut down a massive gun pipeline for TDA into New York City.
Any other questions? Ed Picnic?
Good morning. Commissioner, can you comment on news reports about officers leaving in record numbers?
Yes, thank you for that question. In New York City, historically, officers become eligible for retirement after 20 years. 20 years ago, so January 2005, we hired a monster class. It was about 2,000 cops. And so what's happening right now in January is that a huge class is now eligible for retirement. But this is both predicted and predictable. And so it's not something that is unexpected. It happens from time to time as the city's hiring cycles moved 20 years ago. And so we have to hire more cops to get up to 35,000 cops, but that is largely because of the size of the classes that we hired 20 years ago.
Okay, we have time for one more? Sure. Oh, Georgette Bennett.
Thank you, Commissioner, for that crystal clear review of your innovative policies. You used the phrase up close and personal in terms of your experience with officers. I want to ask you something up close and personal in terms of what keeps you up at night, and what specifically do you worry about the most?
So, living in New York City means living in one of the top terrorist targets in the world. Since 9/11, we have had 70 terror plots aimed or focused on New York City. And we have seen the cadence of those plots and the intensity of it certainly go up since October 7th of last year. We all have to be realistic about it. This is not new information I'm giving anyone in this room. But I guess the thing that would worry me the most is that lone wolf extremist, perhaps on the far left or the far right. We're seeing a lot of that these days, but someone who doesn't communicate with other people and has their sights set on New York City. But what I can tell you is I have been working with and for the NYPD's Counterterrorism and Intelligence Bureau for 17 years. And this is the most extraordinary municipal counterterrorism apparatus that anyone can imagine, run by our brilliant Deputy Commissioner, Rebecca Weiner. And they truly take a layered approach to counterterrorism. They have assets you can see and assets that you can't see, all over the city, all of the time. They have the most robust intelligence operation and deep embedded partnerships with many of our federal partners, a lot of whom are here today. So thank you for that question. I hope that was a satisfying answer.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for being here, and have a great day.